Good afternoon and welcome to the Waters Organisation Joint Committee, Friday 7th of August 2026. In the event of an emergency, our staff will guide you to the stairwells located in the centre of the building, which is through that door, down onto Devonport Road, and please assemble there. Please be aware that this meeting is being live streamed and a video will be publicly available on YouTube. Members, could you please remember to speak clearly into the microphones? And only one person speaking at a time, thank you. And please remember to put your phones onto silent. Hakopa, can we please have an opening karakia, please?
Tēnā koe te tiamana o tira tēnā tātou. Unuhia ki te uru tapu nui kia tau iho mai te tō mairangi atawhai o nā mātua tupuna ki rungi a tātou. E takahia ana i tēnei hikoenga o tēnei uepu. Arataki nei i te wai. Piki ake tāwhaki ki te rangi tuatahi ākina ki te rangi tuarua e ahuru te rua tāwhaki nui a hema. Nā tāwhaki piki ki nā rangi tūhāhā kia puta ai tātou tira tangata ki te whai au ki te ao mārama tūturu whakamaua ki a Tina. Haumi e hui e kia ora tātou.
Thank you very much. I have an apology from Councillor Alvin. He is away today and he's been ably replaced Councillor Joyce. We have two of our tangata whenua representatives online, Kiritapu Allen and Kylie Smallman, and also online is Councillor Beach. Are there any other apologies from any other councillors? No, may I have a mover to accept? Deputy Mayor Margaret Murray-Benge and Councillor Crowther. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Against? That is carried. Public forum. There is no public forum today. Acceptance of late items. I have one late item. It is feedback from tangata whenua on the statement of expectations. Can I have someone move that we accept, please? Councillor Joyce and Hakopa. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That is carried and that will be presented in item 1. Confidential business to be transferred into the open? No. Change in the order of business? There's no change in the order of business. Confirmation of minutes. Minutes of the Waters Organisation Committee meeting held on the 29th of June 2026. Does anyone have anything to report? Does anyone wish to move that they be accepted as Deputy Mayor Margaret Murray-Benge and Councillor Schaller? All those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Item 7.2, minutes of the Waters Organisation Committee meeting held on the 19th of June 2026. Ask the committee, is there any changes they wish to make? Amend? That is no. May I ask for someone to move that the minutes be accepted as accurate? Deputy Mayor Margaret Murray-Benge and Councillor Crowther. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Declarations of conflict of interest. Do I have any conflicts? No. Now we get round to the business of today. Item 9.1, statement of expectations. Tyler, Charles and Adele to open.
Thank you and good afternoon everyone. And through the chair. So the statement of expectations is the opportunity for the shareholders to put forward its expectations of the water organisation as shareholders. This has been worked up on the basis of a lot of the information that was captured as part of our due diligence process and key terms. So you'll see a lot of what has been discussed previously now forms the basis for the statement. There's a number of steps that this will need to go through, which includes going to each council for a recommendation and for consideration, and then also to the board. And then the board will be effective from the 1st of September, so we've got the time to go through those processes. So there will be further opportunities for things to be discussed and or changed, and we just note that we did receive the late information from Kiritapu, and so thank you for that, and we'll just acknowledge some of that through the process that we've discussed with Charles. Just to also acknowledge that Charles has only received that information just over half an hour ago, so had a little time to consider how we might respond, but we do have a pathway forward and how we're going to deal with that matter. So I will hand over to Charles to discuss the expectation paper. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Adele, Mr Chair, elected members and representatives. So we will start today with a very short presentation that kind of covers off probably two things. One, the process that we must follow to ultimately get this to a final document to issue to the water organisation. And secondly, what is actually required to be covered, what must be covered, I should say, in the statement of expectations versus where you have some discretion and matters that may be covered. And that's a pretty straightforward legal analysis. There's not a lot of room for ambiguity there. And really this is the shareholders' document, and so there is a reasonable amount of flexibility, bearing in mind that it is a high-level document that gives high-level governance direction as opposed to prescribing how the water organisation might go about their day-to-day business, which will be a matter specifically left for the board and its chief executive. So what is a statement of expectations? It's a statutory planning tool and accountability document under the Local Government Water Services Act. It sets out the shareholders' expectations, and it's really important to note that the water organisation must give effect to it. So it's not we might take some guidance from it, they must give effect to it. It must relate to 10 consecutive financial years. With that said, though, the Act does not limit the frequency or cadence by which you can issue a new statement of expectations. Our recommendation is that it would be appropriate to consider issuing a new statement of expectations every 3 years to, one, align with local body elections, but two, also to align with the cadence of the water services strategy, which does need to be issued every 3 years. Lastly, there is additional content in the Schedule 5 of the draft shareholders agreement that very much just repeats what is set out in the Local Government Water Services Act in terms of the content for the statement of expectations, and is really there to ensure a consistent approach, not only across this initial statement of expectations, but future statement of expectations as we move forward. So the process and timing, this must go through a number of steps. The first step is that we hopefully walk away today from this group with a recommendation to take it forward to the councils. That will then be approved by the two councils as a draft statement of expectations. Under the Act, you must give it to the Water Organisation Board to receive their feedback, and the councils must consider the board's feedback before they issue the final statement of expectations. So what that means is that we probably will look to take this to the councils at the end of this month or early September. It will then go to the board. They will then send it back to the councils, who will consider it as a final document and then hopefully be in a position to issue this as a final statement of expectations around October-ish, would be our guess. What the statement of expectations must and may cover, that's up there on the slide. I'm not going to speak to each of the items other than to note that we can confidently say that all of the musts, so the left-hand column, have been addressed in the draft statement of expectation. and the majority of the mays, and I think it's probably all of the mays in the right-hand column, have also been addressed too. So the key themes and expectations from this document, I'm going to proceed on the basis that everyone's had an opportunity to read the Statement of Expectations, and so I'm not going to slavishly take you through it. This might be an appropriate opportunity to pause, Mr. Chairman, and either we could probably do this in one or two ways. Either we can receive questions and answer, or we can bring up a copy of the Statement of Expectations and go through it section by section and receive feedback that way, and we're really happy to proceed in either way.
Can I have an indication, nodding of heads of the council of the committee around, do you want to take questions at convenient spots, or do you want to go through the Statement of Expectations page by page? Or do you have specific questions from the statement that you are happy to ask at the end of the presentation? Just work through it. Okay.
I've got one question, and
Deputy Mayor.
whether you do it at the beginning or the end, may I say?
You may say.
Charles, this is fairly bread and butter stuff, and is it too restrictive? Does it allow for those directors who are really experienced to actually recommend back to the shareholding group? Is it hard and fast that they can't alter anything?
So I'll answer that by first of all noting that the draft Statement of Expectations that we've prepared is broadly consistent with Statement of Expectations issued by other shareholders to other water organisations. So you are very much hunting with the pack. In terms of the process of giving the draft to the board, that is really just a case of giving them an opportunity to provide feedback on one or more things. But ultimately, this is the shareholders' document. And if you look at the water services strategy, the reverse will happen. The water services strategy is the board's document, but they will provide that to the councils to provide comment, and they must consider those comments when finalising it. And so the legislation has just been drafted in a mirror image in terms of SOE and WSS, and my expectation is that there is nothing within this document that a board would take serious issue with, and that is because it, one, complies with the Act, two, is broadly consistent with expectations, statements of expectation from other shareholders, and three, we have noted that it does not get into operational detail. It is a high-level governance document that sets your expectations, but the how of how the board implements one or more of those expectations is left to the board. So my expectation is that they would be broadly comfortable with it, but I don't want to prejudge their thoughts.
It is worth noting Kevin has seen this document and provided some feedback. So to some degree, the water organisation has spoken to this. I see he's got his hand up.
Good afternoon, Kevin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bit nasal, so apologies for that. Yeah, I think the key thing, it is to Deputy Mayor from Western Bay, it's a pretty minimalist approach at the moment, in truth, so it does give the board a bit of flexibility. I think that's important, that we effectively under-promise and over-deliver, and we build confidence with the various stakeholders and obviously the water customers as well going forward, because we have to deliver against this and build confidence. So I'm keen that we don't add loads and loads of things and tie the board down, but ultimately it's your decision at the end of the day. I know I've been through the iwi comments here. I think there's some issues that we can look at for the statement of expectations, and I think there's some issues that are probably better in other documents like the transfer of land, etc., etc. But yeah, I think the key thing is to underpromise and over-deliver and build confidence that this is going to be a success.
Councillor Joyce.
Sorry, I'm still a bit scratchy. Slightly more voice than yesterday. This has been billed as part of the formation of this company as the key document for shareholders to express their views. So I'll be interested to know, will there be an opportunity for the public to have some say? I think it's if not the first one, maybe the second one. It's a good opportunity for people to understand that the shareholding councils have not let go. It doesn't need to be an extensive consultation, but I would have thought we should have it out for public comment at some stage. And on that note, I'd be interested in knowing what's happening around the rest of the country. Are they just doing it in-house, or are they actually giving the public a chance to say? Because it is supposed to be the key document for the public, through which the public has a say through their council or the shareholding councils.
Adele?
Just on the expectation is the shareholder expectations, and I understand that obviously the community sit behind it. Where we will be engaging with the communities on the water services strategy, so it's effectively the equivalent to the long-term plan, which is what the water organisation will be carrying out as its activity and how that will be managed, rather than the expectations that come from the shareholders. I mean, because this is not the only council-controlled organisation, and we don't go and consult on every statement of expectations back with the community. So I'm just sort of talking about there's two pathways, as Charles talked to, but the water services strategy is probably more important to the community.
Okay. Two things there. One is the water services strategy is not, but it does not belong to the councils. And I suggest this CCO is more important than others that the council operates.
Just a bit of feedback on this. While we go through this phase, we're currently going through a long-term plan process, and I'm hoping through that process for both councils can have some agreement around the waters portion of their long-term plan process, so it's aligned. So when we do the transfer agreement, there's alignment between projects, and projects are well and truly listed, because we have different long-term plans and different expectations at the moment on our waters program. But when it become a single entity, that entity is going to have to do equal to both areas. And my expectation is that the board will take that on board, and they will ensure that both the waters portion of both councils' long-term plan uplifted, and they can achieve or put forward a plan that both are achieved.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the intention in our council was not to talk about waters in the long-term plan.
Your current plan has it in it. Our next one will not be.
Yeah, the next one will be from the 1st July next year. And as I understand it, the current plan at Western Bay is not to include anything about waters in that long-term plan. So if you're planning at Tauranga City to include some stuff, we're already out of alignment.
No, we're not including it, but it's picking up what's in it to ensure that everything is transferred across. All current expectations of both councils in that space is transferred to the waters entity. Hakopa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Tangata Whenua have filed a late paper just to sort of explain our view on some of the points, and we'll work through those shortly. Just sort of wanted to highlight that our general response to the statement itself is it's okay. Picking up on Kevin's point and taking a minimalist approach, our approach, which we've repeated in this forum on a number of occasions, is changes should either be the same or better. Is what we've collectively agreed to. But our actual thought is, no, they should just be better. So therefore, the benchmarks that we put in place should be high, because we have a high level of expectation about the benefits that will come about with the new entity. So what we've also noticed is that some of the clauses in the statement of agreement don't fulfil the high expectation that we have, but also there are a number of gaps in the document itself that don't address some of the concerns that we have. Again, the main point being is that if we're setting benchmarks in this document, we should set them as high as we possibly can. And the points that we've tabled with everyone is essentially aimed at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Kevin, did you want to respond to that before I get Adele or Charles?
Could I comment first on the consultation? To respond to Councillor Joyce's point, what we definitely will have to talk to the board once they're in place, Councillor Joyce. But my view would be that we should do quite an extensive engagement programme before we get to the water services strategy formal consultation, if that makes sense. So community groups, iwi and hapu, major customers, the various development forums that are around the supply chain, really major that it's really, really important. In terms of the Tangata Whenua comments, I'd first of all say thank you very much. I think there is some good food for thought there. I think there are some things that should be considered around Papakayanga housing, for example, around the outflow standards for wastewater, etc., which are very firmly potentially statement of expectation issues. There are others, though, that I think probably are more to do with governance rather than the statement of expectations, if that makes sense. So I think it's sort of separating those two sets of issues out and running through, probably with the late submission. It might be difficult today, but that's the issue that I think Charles and Tyler need to do, because some of the points are better placed, I think, in other documents. Would you agree, Charles?
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, so I should just note that I received the proposal about half an hour ago, so I haven't had a chance to meaningfully read it or engage. What we are after today is a pathway to move forward so we can keep going through the steps. And so what I suggest we do as a pathway forward is that we note that we've received the proposed amendments and that those proposed amendments will be considered by staff, TCC and Western Bay, before the next iteration of the Statement of Expectation is presented to the councils at the later this month or early September. And that will allow us to, one, meaningfully engage on the written feedback, which is really helpful, to consider the appropriate place for it to land, whether that's statement of expectation, significance and engagement policy or otherwise, and three, allow us to continue to move forward. So that is the pathway forward, and I think it is helpful to have it in writing, and as we work through the afternoon, perhaps if Tangata Whenua could add anything and speak to their particular concerns, that would be helpful to supplement our understanding.
Mayor James Denyer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, appreciate you've had half an hour to look at it, and there's a fair bit there. So, thank you to Harcourt and your team. But if it goes back to staff to have a look at and a thorough think, and I think that's wise, wouldn't it be good to have it come back to the joint committee so we can form our recommendations on that rather than go straight to councils, because otherwise I think we're missing a step there. I'm conscious we don't want to prolong the process longer than it needs to be, but I think given the detail here and the nature of the changes, they probably need to come back here first.
My understanding is the next joint committee is slated for the 27th of August. So that would mean, if that is the direction, that's what we will do. That would mean, hopefully, that we can then take it to council meetings late September, as presented to the board in October, and with it coming back to councils in October or early November. So we are starting to push it out, but I think that time frame and process would be workable.
Can I have a general nod from the committee? Just Are we happy with that process? No, before I do that, I just want to make sure that it's not going to hit, because we are supposed to be a recommendatory only. I know we've got to make a decision on this, but I'll let Councillor Schuler speak and then we'll decide. And Kirita.
Just confirmation from Hakupa, just hearing your fundamental position about so treaty obligations say same or better, coming at it from a fundamental view of saying just want or need better, just from a clarity point of view, is that on the assumption that the same isn't good enough, or have you actually, I suppose the challenge to that would be, would you not be good to go through and identify the areas where the obligations are being met to your satisfaction, and then the other parts that you could say these are areas that need some addressing? I'm just wondering if a blanket approach is to be better, sort of there's an element of conflict with the obligations. I just want to get clarity from that, your position, I suppose, because I haven't had a chance to read this either. And
did you want to make the same comment? Good. Thank you, Councillor Schuler. In the submission document, we make specific reference to specific clauses and what the issue is, and suggest the outcome. In terms of the broader, let's make it better. We get to the 1st of July next year, the tangata whenua participation in this forum stops. There's no replacement. That makes that development worse. Right? And there are examples like that. Kia ora. Okay. Yeah.
I'm just going to ask Western Bay Mayor, this forum will change into something else. It may not function in its current state with its current work program, but the committee will still exist. It will still exist. And it's up to each respective council to make the decision on who sits on it, but it will still exist in some form after the 1st July 27.
And so tangata whenua's point is, yes, we accept that, but there's no clarity at this point or certainty that that will happen and what it will look like. And so if we're to set the benchmark about what the future will look like, that stipulation should be clearly outlined in this statement of intent. So it just brings a degree of clarity about where we get to at that particular point in time. Kia ora.
It may be helpful to clarify for the benefit of everyone that this joint committee is written into the shareholders agreement. It has specifically been recorded as an enduring committee, so it will continue beyond the go live date. It is I think the terms of reference anticipate that it will meet bi-monthly, and that there is a clear list of matters that will come back to it. So this, in other words, this forum continues beyond the go live date.
This is the engagement forum between the waters entity and both councils, basically. I'll just, Honourable Kiritapu Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tēra, koe katoa, ko tai mai. My apologies for not being in there in person. I didn't want to pass on my lurgies to you all. Just with respect to the remarks from tangata whenua to the statement of expectations, I think there's a couple of things. One is this is the baseline document that provides the pathway forward for essentially, for the organisation for a significant period of time. And I think just bouncing off the back of Hakupa there, what we've tried to do, and I heard Kevin, you sort of say that some of it's operational, some of it's governance. I think why we've bedded in all of these various particular components is because when we're going through the shareholders agreement and other documentation to date, we were told to put these types of things in the statement of expectation as opposed to anywhere else. And I think that in hindsight, it's probably right because it provides that baseline for the organisation to have to perform against. What we've also tried to do in the responses is just, ensure that the water organisation itself is adhering to its statutory obligations, and particularly Section 7. You'll be aware that we have the Ranginui settlement is full and final. That's complete. Ngāti Pūkenga settlements are complete. And we have the Tauranga Moana framework, which deals expressly with water in the entire harbour area. And there are some quite gnarly, to use that word, obligations in there on the Crown and on councils. And noting that this organisation will pick up some of those responsibilities, I think what we've really tried to do is bed in those obligations to upholding treaty settlements throughout the statement of expectation so that there is the appropriate guidance there. So I just want to provide some of that context, and we can talk to the nuance as we go through the clause by clause.
Thank you. Councillor Crowther, do you have a question?
Well, not a question, just a comment on Councillor Joyce's comments and Charles, your commentary. I'm interested in the significant and engagement interface between our councils and the Water Services entity. So under the Local Government Act and the amendment, it says that consultation under a particular part of the Act is not required to amend a policy to extend that when the territorial authority has established a water organisation. And I'm just trying to understand, like, we can voluntarily consult, and we do that now in regards to our significant and engagement policy, but once we've put that document out for the first time, does that document come under the amendments in the Local Government Act, or do we still have the ability to just use our normal significance and engagement policy ourselves, or do we have to operate under the water organisations one?
The starting point is that there's no express obligation under the Local Government Water Services Act to consult on a statement of expectations. There is an obligation to consult typically under what's called a change proposal process under the same Act, and that would capture things like the joining of a new shareholder. You'd have to consult on that change proposal process. Could you go and consult? There's nothing in the legislation that would stop you from doing that. But also, to echo the comments from Adele, my understanding is that there's not a history of consulting on statements of intent to CCOs. There's also a timing perspective here where the water services strategy, notwithstanding the fact that the statement of expectations does not exist and has not been issued yet, the water services strategy is already being developed because it is such a big document. That water services strategy must be in a draft by the 1st of March 2027 under the legislation, and the water services strategy must be prepared in accordance with that statement of expectation. So that is a long way of saying that we want to be able to issue this statement of expectation as promptly as possible to the water organisation so they consider it and it can meaningfully be addressed in the water services strategy. And the water services strategy, which is where all the detail will lie, there is a consultation obligation on that document. And that is where we believe the consultation would be most appropriate.
I guess I sort of have a different view because we lose control, and if the water entity does accept public feedback, that's fine, but we have no control over that. And this is our opportunity. As I understand it, this is the solid opportunity for us to go out to our people and say, we haven't really talked to you much about this. We've given you a bit of what I would describe as quite a vague bit of information last year. We've now done a whole lot in the meantime, and we can go back to people, and it would surely meet the threshold under our significance and engagement policies, certainly at our council it would, and to actually go out to people and say, this is the key document, this is our one document where we can influence the future of this organisation. What do you want this document to include? And we will give them a draft, and we will include whatever appropriate tangata whenua amendments and get views on that as well. And to me, I just assumed that was happening. So to hear that it's not happening, I'd ask, why isn't it happening? Well, surely it hits that significance and engagement threshold.
Kevin, is your hand up to answer this, or do you have another statement?
To comment on it, really, the water services strategy will be the key document because it's what are you going to do, and we do want to make sure that we go above and beyond. It's the first one. It will include the 3-year pricing plans and the 10-year financials, but we need to make sure, and that will be done in draft form by Christmas. We need to make sure that there's actually an engagement program before that. So there could be an opportunity, Martin, to cover off as part of that pre-engagement before we get to formal consultation on the water services strategy with council to talk about the statement of expectations, so that we're not confusing people. We're joined at the hip and doing it together. So we could potentially explore, as part of the earlier stages of engagement with the public, about who the new entity is, when we've got a name, and what some of the choices are, and what issues council have raised, and the options for the statement of expectations. That could be wrapped up in a comprehensive engagement programme, and we'd be happy to look at that.
Question?
I wish a supplementary, yes.
Yeah, I guess the question to Kevin, that you're sort of saying we, but I'm meaning we, the councils, because I think it should be our engagement, and I guess that's the point I'm making. You can do all sorts of things, and it's great, and I'm not at all worried about that, but I'm just saying this is our chance. And if it's a 10-year document, it's pretty blooming important. I can't imagine we'd sort of come up and say, well, if the law allowed it, would say the long-term plan isn't significant, but this is 40% of our assets, you know.
Yeah. I'm not saying that we would do it on your behalf. I'm saying that we're very lucky. When I was at EY, we were putting our water services strategy outside of the long-term plan update. We are doing it at the same time the council are doing their long-term plan. We can work hand in glove. And we need to do pre-engagement so that people know who we are and what some of the choices are before we get to those proposals. Therefore, what I'm suggesting is that we could, as part of that, work it through with the councils so that rather than us both going and doing separate exercises, we agree a joined-up programme. There might be 2 presentations at each community group and iwi group, etc. One from council, one from the water organisation, but they're joined up, and we design it around the customer rather than confuse them with separate things. I'm happy to explore that, is what I'm saying.
Great, thanks for clarifying that, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Mia Denia.
Well, perhaps Kevin or someone else can remind us what's actually in the water services strategy and the level of detail that goes to, because I'm thinking when I look at the statement of expectations, I mean, it is important, but they're fairly high level aspirational statements, and if you read through it, I mean, does anyone want to say like, oh, we don't really want compliance and we don't want prudent financial management? I mean, maybe there's something we've missed, but what will happen is they're high level statements, and then you've got a whole bunch of comments agreeing with involvement of tangata whenua or something like that, and it will be, I'm struggling to see the value in that, but happy to be corrected if someone sees the value in the consultation there. But if the strategy is where the bit more detail and something that actually affects someone on the ground comes in, then that might be the better place to ask the public their views.
Just to come in and try and respond, Denia. Yeah, you're right. To a degree, statements of expectations, there's an element of motherhood and apple pie, but there are also some key areas which actually are covered in the Tangata Whenua comments as well, that are significant. So it's a mixture of both. The water services strategy is giving effect to all of that. It will have, what the charge increases are going to be. It will have what's the size of the capital program, which projects are going to be done in the early years. What standards of wastewater outflow are we going to go above the minimum standards set by Te Mata Arawai? And this is the real meat and drink of that's what the public will be interested in. And I think it's important that we don't talk to them for the first time. When we do that consultation, that we've already done a significant engagement program before we get there, if that makes sense. And as part of that, we could do something with both councils, with their policy teams around the statement of expectations and some of the issues that the shareholders are thinking about. That's all I was suggesting. But you're right, the key bit is going to be, the price increases, the size of the capital program, et cetera, et cetera.
So maybe the key thing there is if it's engagement and basically introducing yourselves to the public, and then there might be some high level issues in the statement of expectation that you can seek a bit of feedback on. But it sounds to me like the water services strategy is where the real impact or real what people see in front of them will be discussed more fully.
Councillor Joyce.
I guess the key thing here is it's not either or, right? The water services strategy is a key document, absolutely. It's a key document for the water services company. It's not a council document. What we have been consistently telling the public is that the statement of expectations is the key document where the shareholders will have their say. I realise it's fairly high level. I'm not expecting extensive roadshows. But just putting it out there online and saying, listen, this is what this is how your shareholders are controlling this water company, has a useful message in that. Otherwise, we've been out there telling them, hey, listen, we're going to have control of this thing. It's not going to be let off its leash. We are active shareholders, and the one opportunity we actually have to tell people that we're active shareholders, we're saying, oh no, we don't really want to. So I just don't understand the logic of that. It doesn't have to be a full roadshow, long-term plan style consultation. I do think if we're going to say this is our key document, and we've been saying this for some years, then I doesn't think it hurts to stick it on the website for 20 days and say, guys, if you've got anything you want to say it.
Given the feedback from Councillor Joyce, are we all generally supportive? Is it possible for us to run two parallel pages, one on each council page and on the Waters Entity page on what we expect from them? Anyone in the room can answer that? Sure, we can find somewhere. Deputy Mayor Margaret Murray-Benge.
Could I just say, we've got impressive directors, and I think the public should know who they are in person, and that could be an opportunity to outline the program that we've gone through and the expectations we have for them.
I totally agree and support that, but I also would expect that they're going to complete the 6 months of pre-reading that we've all made, so they're fully up to date to where the process that we've followed to get to this point. Christine Jones is online. Do you have a comment?
I'm just going to, I can respond to your question you were asking before about can you run it in parallel with both councils. So I would have thought you could have something on TCC's website and something on Western Bay's website on consultation, and then you just put a statement that any submissions would be, in the first instance, considered by the joint committee, the Water Organisation Joint Committee, which has representatives of both councils and tangata whenua. So you made that really clear, that people aren't then expecting to only be heard by just Western Bay or just TCC, or that they'd only be considered by just those organisations, and would have parallel wording. So if you wanted to do it, that's a feasible way to do that.
Are there any more questions of our staff? Apparently not. Councillor Crowther?
Can I clarify? Are we going through the document?
Oh, do you want
section?
Right.
I think that's what you said, isn't it?
We will go. Do you want to do it section or page? And just.
I think if we were going to do this, you just take it heading by heading, and I think what we are after is just very high level feedback. Have we captured everything that ought to be captured? If not, what are we missing? Are you generally happy with the way things are ordered and structured? Those sorts of things. Just hearing all the comments over the last 10 or 20 minutes, obviously we'll implement what we are directed to do. The timing does worry me a little bit in terms of we're starting to get very squeezed. And it would be helpful to have direction in terms of the document, if you do want to proceed with the consultation process, how are we going to get that version that we're going to consult on? Is it going to be the version that comes out of today? Is it a version that goes to the councils at the end of the month? Or are we bringing it back to the joint committee? It would be helpful to have direction on that particular item as well. Perhaps we can think on that, but we're more than happy to do a very quick page turn based on the headings, if that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
I'm happy with the headings. Mayor Denyer?
Yeah, I'm conscious of my earlier suggestion. I didn't want it to slow things down hugely. I mean, perhaps a different option would be we go through page by page and think about the tangata whenua considerations. But if you want to have a little bit more time afterwards, that if there's anything that concerns you, like it's something in the wrong place or something like that, then you can raise that afterwards. But if it's easier for the committee or to go through those, so you've got good direction now, then I'm happy to do that. I was just more thinking about your ability to absorb everything as we go.
Yep, I think we can manage this, and I don't think this will take a huge amount of time. So maybe if we just start at the top, it's up on the screen.
Which will segue into my first comment. Actually, it's only one I had because I thought it was a good document overall. But in clause 4, it talks about a 10-year period, but we viewed that it was, if we add but can be reviewed as required, that signals that it's not set in stone for 10 years. It's something we can review when we want.
What I'm going to do is just track some changes to reflect people's comments, but please don't take the track changes as being final. They're just capturing people's thoughts. Right?
Yeah, because my personal comment on that was it should align with each respective council's 10-year plan. So when you redo your 10-year plan, you have the opportunity to put, and you feed it into the water services strategy based off what your long-term plan expectations are. Did you have some feedback, Councillor Crowther? No, Hakupa. Okay.
So if we move on, if there's no more further comments on the purpose and the period, we'll move on to the next one, which is outcomes and operating principles. These are very much, so this is a topic that must be covered under section 2271A, and we've listed those outcomes there. They're pretty lofty, high-level principles, but happy to receive feedback. Have we missed anything? Is it in the right order? That sort of thing.
Kerry Tapu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I thought, just for record, tangata whenua happy to not go blow by blow through each of our proposals, if that would be helpful to the team. Chris Etel. But we're happy as well to speak to the particular amendments sought, if that's also helpful to the committee. So just in the interest of time, I thought you've all got it there before you.
Thank you.
So I think we'd be looking for any comments over and above what Tangata Whenua have committed to writing, that we can make sure that we have captured, bearing in mind that we'll take this away and consider whether that's the best place for it, and as opposed to trying to draft by committee in this forum.
Mayor Denyer?
Yeah, one comment raised by Tangata Whenua, which I think is probably worth having a little bit of discussion on, is in the principles, and Te Mana o Te Wai is not referenced. It seems to me we're trying to say Te Mana o Te Wai without saying Te Mana o Te Wai. And unless there's a political reason not to say it, then we probably should say it, because it's a fairly straightforward and sensible hierarchy of purposes of water, which I would agree with. But equally, I know it pushes certain people's buttons, and if we're deliberately trying not to have it, then that may be the view of the room.
Which clues is that?
Councillor Crowther?
I guess I've talked to people who've told me what Te Mana o Te Wai is, but I've had different answers. So I'm just wondering, is that defined under current New Zealand legislation as to what it is? Because I don't know.
As I said, it's the if I can get this right, the health of the waterway first, it's the health of people next, and economic benefit third. I think the controversy with Te Mana o Te Wai is who gets to decide what's what. So, but as a principle and the hierarchy, it's pretty uncontroversial, I'd say.
My point was, I'm fine that you have a view, everyone can have a view on it, but I'm just saying, is it defined under New Zealand legislation? Otherwise, we need to be clear, we need to define it, because, and it shouldn't probably, with due respect, probably be yours or my view, but I'm just not sure. Is it currently, I know it was under the previous waters legislation, but is it currently in New Zealand legislation, the definition of Te Mana o Te Wai?
According to
through you,
Google,
Mr. Chair.
it's in the National Policy Statement on
Yeah.
freshwater management.
Yes.
So
That's where it is. That's what I was looking for.
The answer is yes, is it? Yep.
Is that correct, Charles?
I'm not a walking, talking encyclopedia, so I can't answer that. But we've noted it, and we'll double check that and make sure that there is a consistent definition. But Kiritapu Alam may be able to provide further direction.
Kiritapu?
No, yeah, thank you. It is still in the National Policy Statement for freshwater, and that, of course, was issued under the RMA. So it is defined, but I just the point just made just prior. I mean, even if you did step it out expressly, as Mayor Denyer said, there's a three-tiered hierarchy. So the well-being of the water body first, then the essential needs, health needs of people such as safe drinking water, and then the third, the ability of people and communities to provide for their social, economic and cultural well-being. It's the hierarchy of priorities for Te Mana o Te Wai.
Any more questions on this section? Councillor Crowther?
I've got a few comments, questions. One of them is, I think we need to separate out the outcomes and the principles, because a lot of those things are not outcomes, but some, you could argue, could be both. Some are just principles, and I think it'd be really helpful, particularly for members of the public reading it, but also to sort of guide us in our thinking to kind of tease out various aspects by separating those two out. So is that possible to do?
Again, without wanting to draft on the fly, I think it's something that we can note and we consider whether that's appropriate. So thanks for that feedback, and we'll decide the best way forward and before we bring this back.
Do you have a question, Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, just to Councillor Crowther, you took, so desired outcomes, obviously, or just the measurables, just because I see them okay together, but I just want a bit more rationale.
I might have been in the transport planning space too much, but I and other governance areas, but normally I'm used to having, you have principles you operate by. We've got them for the council. We've got a set of principles and they drive our decision making, and then we have the outcomes we want in a particular area. And to me, it's just clear, good governance to separate those, because otherwise you conflate things, and I've had experience on our council where that has caused major problems at a very practical, tangible level in our community. So that was my thinking. Shall I move on to the next one I had?
If Charles has finished taking notes, we'll move on to the next one.
Yep. So are we moving on to the next heading?
No, sorry, under this.
Okay.
I mean, no, I've got a, sorry, I've got a list. Another comment was, like, we talk about under these, in terms of outcomes, like we have what I think Mayor Denyer has, I've forgotten the non-pejorative term you use, but sort of what I'd call maybe a bit of waffle. High level, thank you. thank you for helping me out there. So high level things, but nowhere in the document are there the sort of measures for accountability that would hold the board accountable. So it will just be a very subjective thing of a few of us sitting around in a room going, oh yeah, well, I guess they kind of did this, and then others going, well, I don't think they did, and then we'll have nothing to be able to tell whether they did or didn't. And I don't think that's good governance either. So I'm wondering how do we plan to address that?
I tend to disagree generally with that comment. There is very, very strict, first of all, the water organisation must give effect to the statement of expectations. There are very strict reporting and monitoring obligations in terms of half-yearly reports and annual reports. And the shareholders are entitled to request whatever information they desire from the water organisation at any point in time. So there are the mechanisms available for the shareholders to hold and measure the performance of the board.
Can I take an example through the chair? If you take environmental health, irrespective of whether Te Mana o Te Wai is in there, operations that support the health and well-being of water bodies and recognise water as a taonga, are we to, having worked in this space a bit, like, the problem in New Zealand is that we have very, very poor environmental outcomes that are known by the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment and other agencies, and he himself, Simon Upton, has said one of the big issues is there aren't the agreed measurable outcomes, and water is a classic example where you have farmers saying everything's tickety-boo in some cases, and environmentalists saying it's terrible, we're a world laggard, and maybe the truth lies in between. But how can we agree on that if we don't actually set in place at a high level what we're actually trying to achieve here?
It might be helpful to bring up, Tyler, if you could fast forward to clause 18 of the draft statement of expectations. And because I think this does address the concern.
My personal feedback for Councillor Crowther, it's not up to us to set the standards, they're set by outside water agencies, government departments, and through the Commerce Commission we will be regulated and monitored thoroughly, and depending on what happens in the local government space in the next 3 years, we will end up being the monitoring body potentially, Glenn, so there's nothing to stop you from taking out and going and getting water samples and taking them to the lab and getting them tested. We are living in quite a moving environment in the regulatory space at the moment, and water is at the top of most government's department around how do we regulate it and monitor it better. That's pretty much why we're sitting here doing this, is because of the changes in regulations. What it looks like when we get to the end and what we have to comply with and what level of water is acceptable for us as a drinking water and as an outflow water from a waste treatment plant will be determined as we go through this. I don't think it being in this document will help the organisation at all, because it will be fed to them from a different perspective. Councillor Joyce.
Yeah, there's an issue with tying down principles too tight, is that you end up missing something that you need. So to my mind, the principle should be reasonably broad, because that makes sure you don't miss anything by being too specific. I hate that word. Too tied down. And so, you know, Clause 18 does cover it, because it says we will provide these measures and things. There's another regulator out there besides the Commerce Commission, of course, Te Mata Arawai, who has environmental responsibility. So we are going to be monitored whether we want to be or not. But to me, when you put 18 with the principles, the principles are broad, and Clause 18 is that we're going to be giving you a list of measures, bang, 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 bang. Together, those two things cover your concerns as far as I can see.
Councillor Crowther.
I know I'm on a hiding to nothing, but I do completely disagree with Councillor Joyce. I'm not sitting opposite, I promise, almost opposite. So the first point is that I don't think the principles should be narrow. I think they should be broad. So we fully agree on that. But I was talking explicitly about outcomes, which is why I said we need to separate out the principles and the outcomes. And I address the outcomes component only. And they need to be the opposite. Outcomes need to be more, like they need to be meaningful. And the second thing is, sure, I mean, Taumata Arawai and everyone's going to be regulating the heck out of this. But stormwater, are they going to be leading to good environmental health outcomes for stormwater in the way that our communities will see in a tangible way, where their welfare, their well-being and the environmental well-being, because at the moment that ain't happening, and I don't think it is. And I would have thought that would be a real priority for us to say, let's step this up, because we need to do more in that space. And I'm really concerned, but I'm obviously on a bit of a hiding to nothing, so I'll go to another one, which is, oh yeah.
Are you stepping aside for Hakopa, Councillor Crowther?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Crowther. Meaningful outcomes, tangata whenua absolutely agree with meaningful outcomes. And in terms of our paper, our late paper, some of that, a lot of that is based on what we consider to be meaningful and tangible. So in that regard, we would agree with Councillor Crowther's point. But we would not think to come up with what the appropriate measures of that are. And we would expect that to be developed in this general space. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora.
And I also would not like to come up with those outcomes. I would like to in this space. The next one is a question around compliance. What does compliance refer to regarding natural hazards? Like, what are we talking about at a practical level? I sort of get it for the water, wastewater, environmental standards, resource consents, all that stuff. But in terms of natural hazards planning, which has a big overlap with stormwater.
Is there a specific clause that you're referring to?
No, just just under compliance, like 5B, which is compliance. Like, just trying to understand, do we need to have in this document anything? It seems like I could, and it may just be the time pressure to read this, but it didn't make sense that we've got this whole area of complex council work, and an issue that New Zealand is grappling with in a big way around resilience and natural hazards. And we're putting a significant delivery component of that into the Waters Organisation, but I feel I don't understand, and maybe people around the committee table can help me, but I don't understand what compliance we're actually operating under there, because it's renowned as an area without strong compliance requirements.
I think it's nothing more than a high-level statement that signals the Water Organisation will comply with all statutory obligations or relevant industry standards for drinking water or anything of that nature. I don't think it requires any further interrogation beyond that.
I guess what I'm raising then, maybe I'll flip it the other way, which is I think we should address natural hazards at a high level here because it's a key risk. Like I think we're missing in this one of the key risks that councils, well, not so much council, but our residents are going to be facing, and our waters entity, the water company, is going to be right at the forefront, and the directors will be potentially liable for that risk, according to the information I've read on this matter. So I think it'd be helpful to put it in there, because putting it maybe more broadly, it doesn't seem to be directing. Like, to me, one of the key issues is what is the risk appetite or risk tolerance of this organisation, and we don't seem to be commenting on the risk tolerance. And we've just had a meeting here yesterday in a public excluded session on the council's risk tolerance relating to MOAL and the implications for resilience and stormwater. And, you know, stormwater is right at the heart of all this. And I really, you know, I know I'm sort of waffling on a bit, but this is the heart of good governance, is to have strategy and to manage risk.
So just my quick comment on this. The Natural Environment Bill is still making its way through, and we've got a broad understanding what that's going to force all local authorities to comply with. Around issues with compliance, I suggest Councillor Crowther go and move on to a rural farm for 12 months and see how much compliance they operate under on a daily basis, because it's quite strenuous, having spent nearly an hour a day filling in forms to do everything that imaginable that operated on a farm. So depending on where you live in New Zealand, different entities have different compliance issues, and then industrial sector also has vast compliance issues. So it is well covered in current legislation around monitoring and making sure everyone does what they're told. Councillor Joyce.
I noticed that there is a mention of resilience and climate considerations under J, but it's more in passing. So the question really is this need to have its own bullet point and to give it more focus? And you know, I have some sympathy for that view, to the surprise of Glenn, who's probably falling off his chair. You know, we've talked about this extensively at our council as well. And you know, in stormwater, we have, you know, levels of service requirements around stormwater. So, you know, what is an acceptable level of flooding and how far can you go? So, I have some sympathy for the view that it may be worth putting that. It's already mentioned, but it seems to be mentioned that in the context of long-term planning. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we want to emphasise it a bit more, then I could see a need to bring that out into a separate bullet point, because it is an increasingly, well, as Councillor Crowther has mentioned, it's obviously fresh in the minds of both councils, because both councils lost people recently to weather-related incidents, and it needs to be, albeit ours was in a rural area which is outside the scope of the Water Services Company, yeah, it is something that is an increasing focus for councils, and as Councillor Rosebaum's mentioned, you know, increasing focus for legislation as well.
We do have rather a long paper to get through, Councillor Crowther.
Maybe the alternative, how do I raise these otherwise? So Mr. Chair, one of the members has suggested I email all the changes that I'd like to the committee. So when will we address those? Just struggling.
Just the same as ours.
It'll be it'll have to be the same. Have to pay the same process, because if it's going to come to the next Western Bay council meeting, we have to have an agreed today. Well, Charles and Tyler have very clear instructions of what we'd like to see in it before it comes to each respective council, because their next council meeting is before our next waters meeting. So all we can do the same is put a track change in and see how it goes, because you can exercise your views and send them by points, same as what the Tangata Whenua have done to all of us, and we will insert where possible. But remember, this is a recommendatory body coming to council, so you need to ensure that your views are accepted or by both councils, because I don't want to put something in here that gets it rejected. Mayor Denia.
I was going to say that it's not impossible to have another meeting, either for this or for our council. And I suspect we might have one or two council meetings coming up that we weren't originally planning. So, these things can be done, that's all.
Councillor Crowley.
I guess I thought that was the whole point of this meeting, was to address this and one other matter. And normally when we have council meetings, we just deal with the things. I'm really struggling to understand why we just don't deal with it. But you can maybe answer that.
I'm just conscious of time. It's taken us this long to do 1 or 2 pages. If we go through every page, is the bulk of your feedback at the front end of the document? It is, so you're not far away. Rightio. Carry on, Councillor Crowther.
I'll be as quick as I can then. I think we should, on D, we should just either remove regional or correct it to sub-regional, because that was one of the key issues, especially regarding stormwater, that sort of just to be very explicit around it and technically correct. On F, I think we should remove growth, and I presume that's kind of like code for putting developers in the list. So just stick developers, land developers, whatever level you want of developers in the list there, would be my recommendation. And in terms of growth pays for growth, don't have a problem with that as a principle, but as an outcome it's always problematic, which is why I think it'll be helpful to tease these things apart, in particular around, I do have a problem with it in certain circumstances around if it's an outcome we're looking for regarding stormwater. So again, if it can't be removed, could you bring it back with commentary on how you will deal with certain situations around stormwater in terms of outcomes of growth pays for growth, what that means. And then the final one on this section is, unless it could be defined, I would prefer not to have innovative governance, because whenever I've sort of seen that take place in certain organisations, and it worries the heck out of me, because I'd rather just have good governance and stick to standard good governance practice. And I know it's great to be innovative, and we can put innovative all through the document if you want, but I don't know if that's the place to put it. I think it's one of the things that's a very big weakness in New Zealand at the moment, and to have good governance is fantastic. To have innovative governance has led to major problems with some organisations. I wouldn't like that on an essential services organisation. Wellington Waters, I think Kevin can confirm, had innovation included as one of their aspirational things, and I don't think that went overly well in the end.
Deputy Mayor Margaret Murray-Benge.
I can't see and accept the reasoning for growth to be taken out. We're a growth area, and it's really important that it's there.
No, I definitely want it in. I'm just saying if we're not separating out principles and outcomes, I just would like some feedback before it comes to council on how, on the implications of that as an outcome in regards to stormwater. But I definitely I'm strongly supportive of growth pays for growth. Yeah, absolutely, and we've got it very much at the forefront of our thinking at this council.
Mayor Denia.
Yeah, if we're looking at outcomes, then growth isn't an outcome, because we're trying to enable that. So I disagree with deleting that. I agree with Councillor Crowther on deleting innovative. That jarred with me. It just seemed a bit of an odd thing. We're not an experimental hotbed of governance in this joint committee or on the board. So I'm happy with good governance or something like that. That would be fine. Otherwise, happy with these requests.
When it comes to governance, I quite like flexible and adaptable, because the rules are going to keep changing, so the government's going to have to be flexible to adapt. But I'm happy to settle for good, because good also can be defined by the person who uses the word good. If your expectations aren't high, then good's pretty low.
No, I mean, I wasn't meaning to put the word good in, but I'm just saying that I'd probably prefer it. And my final one in this section was under H, customer and community. I think that's a critical one. And I would like to, as principles, sort of within the principles, or however it's worded, to add transparency, accountability in there. And unless people objected, I would have thought affordability would be a good goal to actually put it at the principal level relating to customer and community outcomes.
That's captured at 5A.
I know it's captured, yeah, but I guess I just thought in regards to the, because they're, again, I don't want to take time of the committee, but I've had this come back and bite us at council where I was told it happened at a high level, but then we couldn't accept it at another level and vice versa. So to me, it's quite helpful putting it where you want it to be as well, and it adds one more word, but it will be noticed by the public if it's if the impact is at the customer level, because you could also get affordability for growth and things like that, which could have an adverse impact from many of the customers.
As you and I have discussed many times, Councillor Crowther, affordability is in the eye of the person who's expressing the term affordability. It is different for everybody else. Deputy Mayor Margaret Murray-Bench.
I thought those words would be quite helpful. One thing we do need for this CCO to know that affordability is an important issue when they're planning. Any decision that they make.
Yes, and it's already in there. I'm just conscious that I do not want to duplicate too many words. It's going to make the document a little bit unwieldy. Yeah. Any other comments from other committee members? No? Rightio, moving on. Eve? Yep, moving on.
Next section is establishment expectations. So this covers the period from today through to 1 July. So if we captured all the appropriate comments there, is anything missing? It's the same question as before.
I'm pretty comfortable with this section. Any comments? No? Moving on.
Planning and statutory obligations. So this is, again, another must. This is what, and that is both section 2271B and 2271C in terms of resource management planning and also compliance with all statutory obligations. So both of those matters are covered off. So you're safe from a legislative compliance point of view. The rest of it is really up to you as to what you want to include. But really, paragraph 7 covers 2271B and paragraph 8 covers 2271C.
Any comments, Mayor Denyer?
I'm going to be really naughty here. Can I go back to the Principles 5I? It's a comment that Tangata Whenua have made. And whilst I don't necessarily disagree with their comment, it's a completely different principle that they're suggesting. So in the wording as it is, it's around the company being kaitiaki of water, which, you know, in many ways sounds great, but Tangata Whenua have asked for it to be supporting their role as kaitiaki. That's quite a different idea, and I'd like a little bit of feedback about whether everyone agrees with that and who should be doing what. I mean, maybe they're both kaitiaki, I don't know, but that's, yeah.
Kia ora, Mayor. Yes, in terms of the concept of kaitiakitanga, as opposed to the guardianship role that the organisation would exercise, are two completely different things and operate within different ideological constructs. Tangata Whenua point would be is that the company cannot be kaitiaki for a whole range of, fairly uncomplicated reasons. But they do have a duty of stewardship over the resource we're talking about. So how that blends and plays out is just a discussion that should be had between the company and tangata whenua, right?
I do think it's worth having a principle that the company is a steward of the natural resources or water, that sort of thing, and that could also support tangata whenua to be kaitiaki of water as a taonga. So I think that's, I'd be happy with that, but I think it's important to retain that the company is a good steward of water.
Tangata whenua, I agree. We'll whip something up and I'll just hand it to Charles and figure it out later. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Crowther.
I mean, that's one of the issues that I thought would be helpful to get community feedback on, but also importantly to look at in terms of understanding what we're meaning by statements, because you look at that, and that was, I hadn't actually seen your feedback at that point, but thinking, and I didn't raise it before, but it's just using that word immediately made me ask, like, and the same question I had with Te Manawa Te Wai, because I think we need to understand what we're saying in some of these things and who makes those calls on it. And if it is New Zealand legislation in terms of environmental standards, then given that some water standards have dropped in recent years and got worse than they were for various levels of minerals and things, or metals and so on, that, then you say, well, are we accepting that as being a compliant thing, or is it compliant if it meets Kaitiaki's assessment on, and otherwise, why are we using kaitiakitanga? It might be a beautiful word that is, a great concept, but if we're not really sticking to it and saying that we'll honour the outcomes of assessment of kaitiakitanga, then why are we putting it in there? That's kind of my question from earlier at it, but I'm just expressing it in a different way.
Was that a statement or a question?
Well, it's now a question. It was a statement, then a question. Like, are we serious about kaitiakitanga with kaitiaki, meaning, according to tangata whenua, it means tangata whenua assessing the health outcomes, or are we saying New Zealand legislation will? And I know people like to fudge that and not get into political conflicts and all that sort of stuff, but it is quite important when it comes to water.
Hakupa, do you wish to respond, or does Kerry Taupua wish to respond?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I think that the Meeting's note just prior, I don't think we're stuck on the specific. Sorry, I don't think that we're stuck on the specific wording there, but something like that, worthwhile having a principle that company will be a good steward of water resources, but will support tangata whenua to exercise their kaitiakitanga. I think that was the piece that we wanted to capture in that particular amendment, as opposed to tangata whenua being kaitiaki over all others, if that makes sense.
Exactly so from my point of view. Thank you, Kiri.
And just on that, if we are going to start discussing water quality, I suggest we get an understanding of the cost of the different level of water quality standards, so the public can choose quite clearly between level of water service versus the cost of achieving said water service. That may influence a lot of decision making. Right. Next, any more comments? No. Next page. Next
so relationships and engagement. This is an option of something that you may cover under the Act, so we've chosen to outline how those relationships and engagement should be conducted. It covers both relationships between the company and the shareholder through paragraph 12, and also in paragraph 13, the relationships with the shareholder communities. The relationship specifically with tangata whenua is covered in 14, so maybe we also address that section at the same time.
Questions and feedback on sections, relationships and engagement through to tangata whenua. Appears not. Carry on, thank you. Deputy Mayor Murray Bench.
In 14C, I thought that wording could be improved and be open to partnership opportunities with Māori entities. We know the economic business of Māori is significant, and that partnership, I think that could be better worded.
I'm fully supportive, but I'm definitely keen to keep this as broad as possible, so we have as many avenues as approaching different business opportunities within the Māori business sector that are available to us to tap into. I wouldn't want to inadvertently word it in such a way that we remove a possibility.
Does the entities cover all of those?
Yes. Because we could also, through this process, end up creating or allow the creation of a new business entity to form to provide services to meet needs of the waters entity. So we need to have both.
I am conscious that in tangata whenua and their feedback, Tyler's just brought to my attention that they proposed an amendment which says an active obligation to identify and bring forward partnership opportunities. So maybe tangata whenua could speak to that, given that it's been raised.
Kiri Tara?
Yes. Well, first, just thank you to Councillor Murray Bench, because I think that she's touched on a really important point that we were effectively trying to raise. Two parts to it. First, I think be happy from our perspective to look at whether that term Māori entities is broad enough, and it might be something that we look at defining in the statement of expectations, if that would be helpful. But I think the intention was to try and expand that term to include Māori businesses and those procurement opportunities that might be available.
Just looking around the table, is there any comment, feedback? I'm not adverse. I just want to keep it as broad as we can to ensure that every opportunity is available to everyone, both the waters entity and businesses, to access and provide services to our waters entity.
So
Deputy Mayor?
If our lawyer, Charlie, thinks that that's broad enough, I'm happy to go along with it.
Well, at the moment, it's saying that they just have to be open to it. So that there's a difference between being open to something and actively pursuing those opportunities. So that is something that we need direction on.
Mr. Chair.
Kiri Tapo Allen, do you wish to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think probably what, in absence of an active obligation, the obligation in the statement currently doesn't have any threshold, because it must be open to working with Māori entities. That would seem that any organisation would be open to working with Māori entities. So I think that what we're trying to do there is, what is the active obligation on the water organisation to work with Māori entities to support Māori entities to participate.
This is starting to get a little bit into a procurement type policy, and I do wonder whether that is starting to stray into operational kind of direction. And in the light of that, I probably would be inclined to leave it as it is. And you've signalled your intent that you want the WO to be open to this as a possibility. How they implement that through their procurement policy or otherwise is probably a matter for the board.
Adele?
Just through the chair, so I do want to note that generally there is a stronger focus on broader outcomes of procurement policies of councils in general and other entities. I do appreciate that the water entity will be developing its own procurement policy, and we actually do have that person who'll be writing some of those policies in the room right now who'll be listening to what we're talking about, and that will be sharing that sort of expectation as part of that development of the policy. But I think in general, working with Māori businesses is really, really important is in achieving broader outcomes for the community. And there's now entities that have been set up that can actually acknowledge where those entities are and how much councils and or water organisations are engaging into what level. So there's good reporting as well available.
Kevin?
Just to add, it's not a statement of expectations point, but you'll recall in my review, we said there's going to be a major capability to respond delivery challenge that we're going to have to face up to. And we need to invest in local businesses, and we need to invest and work with local Māori organisations and businesses too if we're going to rise to that challenge. That's something we've got to talk through with the new board. I wouldn't see it as a day one issue, but I see it as a very early priority that we will have to respond to. I understand what Charles is saying, that you shouldn't be trying through the SOE to do the board's job, but an indication that this is an issue you want us to look at. We're chomping at the bit. We know we need to.
Just a question.
Councillor Shaw.
Just a question for Tangata Whenua, either Kiritapu or Hakupa. If that was worded, it's like you've got two adjectives for identifying. So you're saying actively, and then you're saying an obligation. If you just actively identified and brought forward partnership opportunities, does that not sort of find from a word, I know it's wordsmithing, but it takes away that, again, I suppose the question would be, is it over and above what's required, where if you're saying, well, in a positive mindset, you're actively looking to identify and bring forward opportunities, yeah.
I think we'll leave this up to Charles.
I think, yeah. But I thought that proactively definition probably it went to the heart of the amendments we're proposing.
I'll take Kevin nodding as a yes. Any other? Charles, are you reasonably happy with that? You'll wordsmith that?
Yes, we
Thank you.
have
We'll
direction
carry
on that. So the next section is water service strategic priorities. So Schedule 3 of the Water Services Act specifically sets out what must be covered by the Water Services Strategy. Paragraph 17 in the Statement of Expectations is about identifying what the shareholders see as the priority. So again, have we got this right? Is anything missing? Please let us know.
I'm happy with this. Councillor Crowther?
I'm just wondering where you sort of see, risk sits, and particularly again, like just my same point as before, like knowing that we're likely to have increasing risk from the implications of public land and other land with regards to stormwater, and where we put risk tolerance and who sets those risk tolerance levels. So as a strategic priority for the water services strategy, shouldn't that be right at the forefront, or am I missing that it should slot somewhere else?
If that is a priority, I don't have Schedule 3 open in front of me, so I can't cross-reference whether that's kind of one of those things that needs to be covered, but if that is a priority, we can consider that. In terms of who has the risk, with responsibility comes the risk. So this is going to be a three waters entity, so the water organisation will be responsible for risk management of stormwater, but there is a clear interface with the local councils, and that will need to be probably managed in a very clear, explicit way through a kind of shared interest sort of arrangement, in terms of being clear who is going to do what in terms of ensuring that there are safe outcomes and their risk is managed.
I guess the issue I'm trying to address is we know there are and are likely to be court cases where councils have sort of tried to draw a line around the implications from public land and said that's the extent of our liability, and then in some cases that hasn't been the extent of their liability. And I guess it gets more complex when you've got another party involved who are delivering stuff but on land that we own and on private land. And I guess to me it should be a absolutely forefront of strategic priorities, given it's one of the big issues facing New Zealand, and stormwater is right at the forefront of that.
I think we can note your concern, and we can also note that as part of a broader topic of stormwater and setting and collecting the charges, we are actively considering how we're best to manage stormwater risk particularly, and that will form part of future presentations to this group and councils.
Mayor Denia, followed by Kerry Tapu Allen, and then I'll come back to Councillor Crowther.
2 points from me. On it's Tangata Whenua feedback on these priorities. They've suggested add a priority on progressing alternatives to discharge to water developed with Tangata Whenua. I think I'd prefer as add a priority on the consideration of alternatives to discharge to water, because you don't want to preempt what the decision might be. We've been through a lengthy process for Katikati, and actually the Hapu wanted it to remain, or improved somewhat, but not a completely alternative. So I think I'll be happy with that. Secondly, on 17G, where we talk about the no dividends unless there's exceptional circumstances, and then the footnote talks about, for example, the sale of surplus land. I'll just take out the footnote. It's just going to, it doesn't really add anything, and clearly if it's going to cause problems for people, I just don't need. I don't think we should be specifying why you might be given a dividend here.
Yeah, my issue is are our two sale of council land policies consistent, and how does that transfer to the waters entity? Because under our policy, Tangata Whenua have first right of refusal anyway, and does that right transfer to the water entities? And if you have the same policy, it's that is what will govern the ownership of council land, is it not?
Well, the question here is there are no dividends unless there are exceptional circumstances, and basically we spent a long time in the working group saying that no one can envisage any circumstances where you would give a dividend, and then just to try and stick one in here randomly just seems a bit pointless.
Just through the chair, we've only just recently added that back in just for completeness, because it was as to when that would actually happen and why we've had to include it, and what that scenario would be. But you're happy to take that out.
Have you finished, James? Kerry Tapu Allen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, this is probably the one cause in particular that gives me some cause for consternation. I think the issue that I've got with this one is that we've got the Tauranga Moana Iwi Collective deed of settlement that's been signed. That there creates the Tauranga Moana framework, which provides a whole range of obligations on councils to work with Tangata Whenua when it comes to the well-being of Te Awanui or Tauranga Moana. So this one here, and the big issue here, of course, is discharge to water. So I think what we're trying to do here by adding that priority to progressive alternative to discharge of water is to align it with the TMF. So I just wanted, Charles, I thought that might be just helpful to note for you in particular.
Have you finished, Kerry? Kevin.
Just a quick point on James's points earlier. Just to note that the Commerce Commission are going to produce some sort of paper on dividends, but effectively what it will be doing is making sure it's very rare that water money is spent on water projects, etc., etc. So it's I think the intent there is the right one. And as Adele said, the reason for that example was just to show that it would be really exceptional.
Mayor Denyer.
If you can just scroll back up, I don't think you recorded quite my suggestion for the alternative discharge. So I'm happy for a priority and a strategy to be consider a priority on consideration of alternatives to discharge to water, etc. It's not considering progressing, it's consideration of alternatives. So just to be clear, I want us to consider alternative discharge, and we are already. It's not considering whether we might do it or not. Yeah.
No, point well taken. Councillor Crowther.
I can't remember my point anymore.
If it comes back to you, we'll raise it and scoot back. Right. If that's it for that section, any more questions? No. Move on to the next page.
Performance and monitoring, we've already really touched on this earlier, so I think the key points to note is that there are ongoing reporting obligations from the WO, and there is that kind of catch-all safety net for the shareholders that they can request anything they like at any point in time should they need it. So we probably don't need to labour this too much.
And just as a note, all the reporting via the Waters entity to the Commerce Commission will be publicly available. Is that correct?
I don't have that in front of me, but I would expect that to be the case.
I read something in the Commerce Commission statement that it would all be publicly available, because it's public information from a public company, so it'll be publicly available. Any comments on this section? No? Next section, operational direction.
So the last section is about operational direction. We've said a number of times this afternoon that you can't give operational direction. The one exception is where it's incorporated into the founding documents. There are two components where this has been addressed in the founding documents. One is around ring fencing, and two is the setting and collecting of charges. And what we have set out at paragraphs 20 and 21 reflect that. We have updated the table at paragraph 22 with a new column to clarify that it will be the water organisation who determines the level of revenue, which was always going to be the case, notwithstanding the fact that the rate, the councils might use the Rating Act to collect it, but we just wanted to make that crystal clear.
Questions, Councillor Crowther?
Yeah, this is the one from our council meeting, the question in terms of if, seeing we're going down this track, the ability to control things seems to hinge on this, is my understanding, as to what we put in the statement of expectations, because we can't actually set, we can't determine the level of revenue required, but we can guide what process the board uses to determine the level of revenue required. And so to me that's a crucial piece here, because particularly in stormwater, I would suggest, because of a number of factors, but potentially for wastewater as well, you could argue that there will be an incentive for a board to spend a lot more than a council might have done, or has, and certainly there's evidence, strong evidence in New Zealand, independent analysis in New Zealand to show that that would be the case for Tauranga City Council, that we've held back in recent years on stormwater expenditure because of the constraints imposed by council, either willingly or not, from a staff perspective. And so then you go, well, how do we do that? If the goal is to sort of have, let's say, a moderate risk tolerance based on sort of evidence, and to have a moderate level of revenue required, how do we guide the company at this point to not go crazy on either extreme here, because obviously there's the mandated stuff, but there's plenty of room for manoeuvre, you know, and how much a board will spend.
So there's a process to get to the amount of revenue that's required to allow the water organisation to succeed. So shareholders issue the statement of expectations. The water organisation then must prepare their water services strategy, which gives effect to that. And in order to give effect to the water services strategy, the water organisation needs to be given, and this is a legislative requirement, sufficient revenue to meet their capital program, meet all their financial obligations, and just generally succeed. So there is very little ability, if any, I would say, for a water organisation to just set the revenue, to state the revenue that it requires that's completely out of whack with reality, or goes far beyond what they require to meet their obligations. So I don't think this is a real risk, because I think it can be clearly managed through these relevant documents and will be fleshed out through the appropriate arrangements which manage this operational process. And that will come back via kind of a water rates collection agreement, for want of a better term. But it's something that we're very aware of, and we're comfortable that it can be adequately managed.
Have also a response from Adele and then from Kevin.
Through the chair, and I'm sure Kevin's going to talk to the same thing as I'm going to talk to, but effectively the regulations that will sit across the top of the water organisation includes pricing, and so there's going to be a review of how that's carried out in conjunction with some of the key metrics of the water organisation. But I might go to Kevin as well, given he's more in this space in operations as well.
Yeah, I think from a legal point of view, the company, the water company, needs to be able to determine the priorities and the pricing, and it will consult the councils on that. But there's also a practical issue here. The last thing we want to do is go and introduce a load of new sort of pricing and collection arrangements on day one. Just look at Te Atiwai now. People are having to fill in new forms, and we want that safe transition. So on day one, the customer doesn't really notice too much difference, and that we manage this very carefully. Because if we get this wrong, we'll all have egg on our face, all of us, not just the company. So it's really critical, all this stuff. So the legal responsibility is very much with the water services entity, but we need to be practical about just doing these changes to each of the areas in the right way. And there's still an issue in the long term on stormwater. It would be preferable, in my view, to change the law so that water entities can continue to capital rate for stormwater. That's not allowed at the moment, hence the sort of compromise solution that we discussed at one of the previous committees. But so what we're trying to do here is reflect the reality that the company has the legal responsibilities around the water services strategy and the pricing, but actually we need to have a sensible, safe transition to that as well.
Any more questions? I understand QTAP Ellen is leaving us shortly. Thank you very much for your questions today.
Yeah, sorry about that. Apologies, Cam. Feeling terrible. All the best with the rest of the deliberations.
Next questions, Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you for your input. I'm wondering two things. I've read some of the EOI and some of the other water, the SOEs for the other water entities. Our one does seem maybe a bit more vague, in my view. And, something like risk for instance, the clause in the EY one, and also the growth one, where it's very specific and it refers to helping to, I can't remember the wording, but so basically helping to support growth and future development strategy, you know exactly what they're talking about. Our one's just vague words, and the time after time I can go through all those issues and just say ours seems to be holding the company far less tightly. Now you've got a hat on over there as well, so if you maybe keep switching your hats as you answer this question, you know, what are your views? Because this seems much looser to me, and are there gaps that you see?
On growth, Glenn, we are going to in fact, we were meeting as staff just a few days ago to look at the current position. There's quite a big change required, really. We've got different development contribution approaches in the two councils. There's a shortfall. Actually, there's quite a lot less growth really happening on the ground compared to 10 years ago when it was at its peak. There are some other ways we could fund growth going forward that we need to explore, and that this needs to be a significant focus area. We did some stuff in EOI. It was easier because of the political timeframes. By going early, they could do something. I think it'll be more difficult as we're running up to elections, but it is an area that does, you know, from a not necessarily from an SOE perspective, but we do need to look at to make sure that growth is paying for growth. We probably need a blend of new things that we're not, you know, we're not doing to the same extent. We're going to have to harmonise the development contribution approach between the two. So it's definitely an area of work. Can be quite helpful to have that signalled in the SOE, because it gives, these are going to be tricky things to handle, aren't they? And it's quite helpful sometimes to be able to say, this is what the shareholders are asking us to do. So I think this is something we could definitely look at as some of the options begin to emerge. And it might be appropriate to be a bit stronger in that space.
Through the chair.
I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I mean, that's definitely my thinking. I think we should be clearer, more straightforward. We should be saying we want to, we can use the word innovative here, looking at innovative ways to capture, you know, to extract value capture and get growth to pay for growth, and, you know, tangible ways of doing that. But also, I think apply the same thinking to the risk approach. And, you know, the EY one talks about oversight, such as through a risk and assurance committee, and you know, looking at a little bit tighter wording there. And I just think that whole area of growth and of risk, both those areas, I think we're too weak in this.
Councillor Scholler.
Just on that, so Kevin, talking about just, I suppose, maybe strengthening the implementation expectations, and I don't know, you know, however it makes sense to break it down, and just make sure we get regular reporting on that.
Yeah, I think we could look at that. The only thing I'm nervous about here is the timing, because we're going later. So we're getting close to elections, which is not always a good time to make some fundamental changes. Whereas in EOI, you were 12 months earlier. So I would just want to think carefully about the timing of all of this, but we're definitely going to look at it, Councillor Schuler.
I believe we're at the end. Any more comments? All good. So, just referencing the recommendations in front of us, F and G, given the fact that we've put pretty much the insert amendments that are listed in G, we've pretty much done it already. So we're going to take the amendments in G as what we've completed, and we'll have an attached document, the tangata whenua will be attached to this, and it will be presented to both respective councils. And what I would like to see, if it's okay from the fellow committee, is that Charles and Tyler wordsmith our feedback and then send us email copies of the amended version. We will then review it. And what would you consider to be, you need a week? Bearing in mind that Western Bay goes first for the council meeting, so they'll want at least a week to review, so they'll need it by the 20th.
We can commit to providing you with an updated document by the end of next week with written feedback as to why we might not have incorporated something if that is the case.
Yes, and I'd also like a bit of feedback on if the feedback from tangata whenua is not incorporated into the statement of expectations, in which document is it picked up? Just so on the day, on both council meeting, we can say, yes, we got this feedback, we've accepted it. It's probably not best for the statement of expectations, but it is picked up in this document. So we know where it's being followed and tracked. All good?
Just a point
Charles?
of clarification, just so I understand that I've understood the process. We will take the feedback that we've heard today. We'll come back to you by the end of next week via email, which will attach a track changes version of the document and an explanation as to why we might not have incorporated one or more pieces of feedback, and if it's appropriate, we'll also signal where that other matter could be considered through the establishment of other documents. And then my understanding is that we take that version, pending feedback from each of the key stakeholders, we would then take that version of the draft statement of expectations to individual council meetings at the end of August and early September.
Is everyone happy with that process? Barry? Hakupa?
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Just curious, so you'll send it out to us individually and then we respond back individually? Is that the process?
I think we would send it maybe to, is there a chair of each stakeholder group, or do we just send it to, perhaps we send it to everyone, and then the kind of leader or chair of each stakeholder group can come back to us with that stakeholder's viewpoint to confirm that we can proceed through to a council meeting.
I'm happy with that. Councillor Crowther, you have personal view?
No, not so much. Just a question, like, you're saying stakeholders, like, you're referring to iwi, but is there anyone else?
So I should make it clear, there's TCC, Western Bay and tangata whenua. That's what I mean by that. So there are three.
So the shareholders in iwi?
Everyone who is a member of the joint committee.
Okay, so we're going to remove F. We have a list of recommendations before us. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the statement of expectations with the changes? Deputy Mayor Margaret Murray Bench. I'm happy to second. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Joyce?
I was wondering where we got to with the public. Do we actually need to define that now, or is that going to be defined later?
In relation to consultation. Charles?
There might be an opportunity to do that following approval of the draft statement of expectations by each individual council, because there will be a period where the councils approve that draft and it has to go to the board for feedback. And so it might be you do the two things at once. You give the draft to the board and you also seek feedback from the public, should that be your intended approach, and then both of those matters come back to council to finalise the document.
Yeah, it could be a draft resolution that goes to the councils whether or not they want to. I'm mindful that this is just a recommendation body and can't decide whether it's going to consult on the SOE or not. But it could be go as a recommended resolution.
Does it need to go? Do we want to put it into these recommendations? Is there a general feeling that we want to do that?
That there is a requirement for the board to consult.
The process Charles outlined, was that a recommendation that the councils consult alongside with the public alongside the board?
Mayor Dinia.
That sounds like a resolution of each council to do that.
Yeah, there's a recommendation, but you want to combine. I presume you'd want the two councils to have a similar recommendation, otherwise we get in a real mess.
So when this goes to the council, we'd say we then resolve to send it to the board, and at the same time resolve to allow engagement with the public. And at that, when the agenda's put together for that, I imagine we just collaborate on the.
I just wondered whether it should be a recommendation. I just wondered if it should be a recommendation of this joint committee.
As we add it as a resolution on the end of this, or recommendation on the end of this, that we recommend that councils consult or engage. Because it's a timing thing. A full consultation takes time. Yeah. Yeah, there are levels. So what level? Low level community engagement? I'm happy to add that. Is the Deputy Mayor happy to add that? Yes, she's happy to add that. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Sir, it's a crucial time, and although you could say we've pontificated all of this, what we've done is we've set out the expectations clearly for the community, clearly for the shareholders, clearly for tangata whenua, and clearly for the directors. And I think it's long-winded, but it has to be, and more than happy to low-level consultation. If that means that an individual councillors can hold a meeting with their community and explain what's going on, could be quite worthwhile. But that's for another day.
Thank you. Are we happy with the wording as it is? Consider consultation with stakeholders?
Yes.
You want to specify engagement? Yeah, I'm worried about the public engagement.
On the statement of expectations.
Consider or hold? Yeah, holding it. This is like a double, have done sort of vague.
Consider is good.
We are recommending this to our respective councils. My goal here is to recommend something to our respective councils that our respective councils will agree with.
What is the engagement on?
I'm sure if we add, and Charles has given us a window and he's happy.
We need to tidy up G. So
It's a decision.
Need to tidy up G?
It's a decision for the councils, but
Yeah.
I think that recommendation's appropriate, and that's fine, and that can be picked up by the councils once it gets to them.
this G needs to be tidied.
Yeah, G needs to be reworded because it's coming back to us for a short review.
He recommends the draft statement of expectation is circulated to the joint committee by 14th of August. For confirmation ahead of the council meetings on the 27th of August and the 1st of September respectively.
I'd say Requests rather than recommends.
This is really wordsmithing, but do you really want the dates there? What if the councils actually have another meeting we could slip this into? You know, why tie them down to a council meeting on a particular date?
Yeah, we could replace with next convenient respective council meetings. I know you are, you are indeed, Councillor Joyce, but yes. But as we stand right now, these are the two next council meetings on our calendar. Yes. Any other comments? Due to the length, Hakupa?
Kia ora tātou. Just like to thank the committee for accepting our late paper, but also the approach that we've taken in this meeting, which is here's our thoughts. If you have any questions, ask us. So thank you, Charles and team, for the rapidness of your adapting to those late papers. But again, this just emphasises the fact of good communication between us, open transparency, and tangata whenua clearly stipulating what our approach to this is. And, you know, that might work or might not, but at least we can all have an open conversation about it. So, tēnā koutou. Thanks, Charles and Ghost.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Tyler. Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, if Councillor Joyce wasn't here, I think I'd slipped into an alternate reality, because so thank you. Because to me this is not of, what's that? Or maybe, to me this is of high significance, and I read our significance and engagement policy, and I just can never understand that kind of thing. So for me, my view is this is of high significance. It's going to incur huge costs in the future for the people who live here. As Kevin has pointed out, the pricing will probably get a bit of community feedback, but it will be a really big issue for people getting a waters bill which includes wastewater, within, this is a 10-year time frame, stormwater might be on there, and all sorts of things. And similarly with the next item, to save me speaking to that on this matter, to me that's of high significance, the name. Like these are huge public interest in this stuff. And compared to a lot of things that are also medium significance, I think, it's essential we have public engagement, I would think, to sort of just, if nothing else, just like a safety valve, just to say, well, we give people the chance, and if nobody turns up, nobody gives any feedback, that's fine. But it gives the chance, and we can put hand on heart and say we're being transparent and we're giving people an opportunity to guide us. And we don't have to spend a lot of money. We can do it just what we do with a whole bunch of other things. And this, to me, is more important.
Anyone else wish to speak? Mayor Denyer?
So this isn't a decision we're making. So we're recommending. That's why things tend not to be high significance. If you're just recommending to someone who is the decision maker, then that might change it. So I'm comfortable going out for some public engagement. I think that's a good way of doing it. But yeah, just picking up how the significance engagement policies tend to work.
Anyone else wish to speak? We have a set of recommendations before us. Does everyone happy with the wording? They can all read it, they've all seen it. Yes. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations and to recommend them to our respective councils, say aye. Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you. Now we're going into public excluded to discuss the last item on our agenda. May I have a mover and a seconder? So we're going to public excluded. Hakopa is moving.
Can we just have a quick break before the next session? Is that all right, Mr. Chair?
I was going to go into public excluded and then break, but that's...
Okay.
Second to James. Did Councillor Joyce move it?